of the vote.
Canada, you got rid of your globalist leader to replace them with a new globalist leader. Hello, we stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on Rumble. Join us there to hear us telling the truth on subjects like this one. What's the point in having elections and having democracies if you always vote for a bleeding globalist anyway? You get rid of Trudeau, who if he was Fidel Castro's son, that'll be the most interesting thing about him, only to replace him with Mark Carney, Epstein friend and globalist. In fact, I don't know if there's any evidence that he's Epstein friends, but certainly he's been photographed hanging around with Ghislaine Maxwell, and that ain't a good look, baby. Let's have a look at how figure of the left, our very own George Galloway, assesses Mark Carney. He says, democracy is the former governor of the Bank of England with no seat in Parliament. I'm not going to do the accent, it's annoying for people. Being designated as the new Prime Minister of Canada without a single Canadian casting a vote for him, while the runaway leader of the Romanian presidential campaign is banned from standing. So is this the democracy that wars are being fought for? Is this the democracy that your tax dollars and pounds are being spent for? Whether it's propping up Ukraine in a conflict against an insuperable opponent in Russia, or the EU trashing Romanian electoral processes, or Canada electing a globalist? What is this democracy that we're fighting for and dying for? And is globalism, in spite of the rise of American nativism and French nativism, still in the ascendancy? Let's learn a little more about your new globalist overlord, Mark Carney.
In first place, the next Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, with 131,674 votes, resulting in...
He was just a plucky kid running the Bank of England who, through moxie and street smarts, ended up being the Prime Minister of Canada. Almost as if there is some sort of global order that connects finances and politics.
29,457...
And there she is, Chrystia Freeland, that defender of democracy, whose grandfather is a Nazi, whose godson is Mark Carney's son. Ah, sweet democracy. Is that the smell of That's not the smell of democracy.
Points representing 85.9% of the vote.
Yeah, Canada, democracy, boo, Trump, you monster, we'll stand up for you, we'll cut off your electricity, we won't drink your bourbon, we'll prop up another globalist to stand against you, freedom, no more maple syrup for thee.
And we've just had the announcement that Mark Carney is now the new Prime Minister of Canada and the leader, of course, of the Liberal Party. And he won by a pretty astonishing 85% of the vote.
I mean, at least Justin Trudeau had good hair and potentially an interesting backstory. Who is this bald globalist? Give us back our boy band globalists. They used to be good looking with good hair. Rishi Sunak in the UK, nice hair. Now have we got Keir Starmer, old nasal AIDS test. Oh, I've done an AIDS test on myself. Hello. Oh, look at this. It's Peterson 1980. People are taking the intravenous drugs and bumming themselves senseless to Freddie Mercury's hit new song, Killer Queen. Better have an AIDS test down my old dicky bird hole. We've replaced bad globalists with even worse globalists, and they have the gall to call it democracy.
We're expecting to hear from him soon, but let's go straight to Diana Magnay, our international correspondent. Diana, not only has he won, but he has won resoundingly.
That was an astonishing difference between him and Chrystia Freeland, the number two, who's long been deputy.
Like her echoey voice, and I didn't like the way she appeared as a black square. What are you, an Instagram meme from 3 years ago?
The Prime Minister and the Finance Minister who resigned at the end of last year, she only got 8% of the vote, and Mark Carney coming in with nearly 86%. That is absolutely astonishing. He promised a mandate for change within the Liberal Party.
What a lot of total bollocks.
And I think that's clearly what people wanted. They wanted someone who was an economic strong hand, which Mark Carney, having been both governor of the Bank of England through Brexit.
That's interesting. He used to be the governor of the Bank of England, and now he's the Prime Minister of Canada. What's next? Head chef at the WEF? Matron of the WHO?
Governor of the Bank of Canada too is something that, you know...
It's a rags to riches story. 1 minute he was there, toiling down at the Bank of England, struggling at the Bank of Canada, and somehow, against the odds, like Rocky Balboa, he rose to be the leader of Canada. Now it's time for some democracy, everyone.
Economics is his bread and butter. And I think also this was clear that they just wanted to move away from the politics of the last decade of Justin Trudeau, with whom Chrystia Freeland was so closely implicated. You know, Mark Carney is a very, very solid figure in terms of the economy and therefore dealing with Donald Trump, but he doesn't have political experience in the way that Chrystia Freeland did.
He's got experience with dealing with Donald Trump, doesn't have a political experience. Now, note how the legacy media comments on, say, Kash Patel or Bobby Kennedy when it comes to their lack of experience. I'm not suggesting that globalism has one form, but certainly legacy media has plain and discernible biases. And more important than the inflections applied by these unreliable liars at legacy media is the simple fact that globalists and imperialists very much hold the reins when it comes to global and economic power, the levers of power, what wars get fought and what wars don't get fought, what information is valid and what information is misinformation. And the elevation of Mark Carney demonstrates that you can go from being governor of the Bank of England to the leader of Canada. No one in legacy media will point out that, that's a bit odd.
He's never been a politician, but in his own words, he has been a leader. You don't lead institutions like that unless you have considerable experience leading organisations.
The bit when he was getting the experience, you don't lead organisations like that unless you have considerable experience that he got from doing that, and now he's using that for running Canada. When was the bit when he got the experience? When he was on Epstein Island? I'm not suggesting that he's been on Epstein Island, but we don't know, do we? Because no one will release the files.
And he has a very, very difficult job on his hands in terms of this tariff war with Donald Trump.
That's not all he has on his hands if he's friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. The government's running on caffeine and corruption. Don't let your morning fuel be just as weak. 1775 coffee is roasted for rebels, revolutionaries, and anyone who thinks their coffee should taste like freedom, not like the tears of an overpaid diversity consultant. Dark roast, it hits harder than a tax audit. Medium roast, smoother than the excuses they give you when inflation spikes again. Vitality mushroom blend fuels your brain like you just figured out they're lying to you. Hand-picked single origin beans roasted fresh in Myamsky, because your coffee should be fresher than whatever nonsense they're selling on the news today.
You can smell it.
And if bold flavour and non-compromising quality weren't enough, every dollar you spend enters you to win a Cybertruck and 30 grand in cash. That's right, free coffee, free truck, free money. Almost makes you feel like a politician, except this deal actually benefits you. I'm driving around in that Cybertruck. If you see me pass, I will take you anywhere within a 15-minute radius. I'm Cybertrucking around. I can't endorse absolutely every slogan on it, but most of them I wholeheartedly agree with. So if you want a near deadly cup of coffee and a lethal Cybertruck, make sure you're near a charging station when you use those things. Then go to 1775coffee.com, use the code BRAND for 15% off, and start your day like a real patriot with coffee that stands for something and refuses to sell for weak beans or weak leaders.
But clearly, the Canadian Liberals felt that he was the man to combat Donald Trump rather than Chrystia Freeland.
We can hardly claim that Jordan Peterson is an unbiased voice when it comes to Canadian politics, but at least he's an authentic and outspoken one. His views on Mark Carney: well, you know, he doesn't seem to me like the leadership type. Doesn't seem to me at all. It's not obvious to me at all.
Inevitable grand poobah of the currently wretched, but still dangerously powerful Liberals. One Mark Carney is one of the world's prime advocates of the insane inanities of net zero. He is a man who has planned in writing, not least in his best-selling book, Values, the complete destruction of the fossil fuel industry. Bye-bye, Alberta, if that's not bad enough. And it is. He's also simultaneously an advocate of the same post-national view of Canada defined by Trudeau Jr. and his moralistic minions. What are we? According to such good thinkers, Nothing. But if anything, the oppressive, patriarchal, white, supremacist, identityless, colonial settler state defined by the progressive ideologues in the think tanks and elite dining rooms in Eastern Canada and the protest encampments on the campuses of Canadian universities.
I love Jordan Peterson. It can't be easy to live with him, though. He's quite intense, isn't he? What are we? What are we? What are we, according to these ideologues? Perhaps the reason that Jordan Peterson acquired the credibility that he did is that he was willing to be outspoken in times of oppression and government truculence and interference when it came to a variety of issues, whether that was the trucker protests in Canada during the pandemic or the use of pronouns or enforced speech. All of those things where Jordan Peterson was outspoken was when I first developed a friendship with him and when I realised that I agreed with him on a whole bunch of things. And I certainly agree with the concept of him and I find him delightful in his authenticity. The fact is that Canada lost the right to call itself a liberal democracy during the pandemic period, where Justin Trudeau was all liberal when it came to the haircuts, but all minstrel when it came to the policy. I.e., that guy blacks up a little too much, particularly when it comes to calling other people Nazis. Here is Justin Trudeau saying goodbye to Canada, lachrymosely and tearfully, without ever acknowledging his own extraordinary conduct while in office. I.e., Emergency Act, the constant blackface, the calling his own citizens Nazis simply for protesting, the freezing of bank accounts, the inviting the Nazi to be in Parliament, the open admiration for China and their totalitarianism. What a peculiar liberal.
And make no mistake, this is a nation-defining moment. Democracy is not a given. Freedom is not a given. Even Canada is not a given. None of those happen by accident.
That's funny, isn't it? Canada didn't happen by accident. Probably was a little bit of an accident. Arbitrary borders drawn, furriers, trappers, loggers, crazy colonial days. What is Canada? What is any nation? What divine right do any of us have to exist or to be if there is no God at all anyway? If nothing makes sense, if 1 minute we're funding neo-Nazis in the form of the Azov Battalion, in the next minute we're condemning Nazis in the form of Canadian truckers, and the next minute we're celebrating Nazis in the form of that Nazi they got into Parliament. Nothing means anything in their crazy world, and if nothing means anything, anything can be a god, and anything can be the highest principle, and the former governor of the Bank of England can suddenly become the leader and Prime Minister of Canada. No wonder Jordan Peterson, with his Jungian honesty and his piercing authenticity, in spite of his flaws, is such a valuable voice when it comes to Canadian politics. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? Remember, we stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at these times. Join us then for those streams to get our perspective first and unfiltered on Rumble, and then become a member of Rumble Premium if you want even more content than that. More important, though, is that you please, if you can, stay free.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.